Every year, the NBA playoffs deliver some amazing performances. We usually remember the season-defining moments, like LeBron and Kyrie's Game 7 performances against the Warriors back in 2016, or Steph's 43 points against the Celtics last year, but throughout every long playoff run, a few gems slip through the cracks. Today, we're going to be taking a look at 5 amazing playoff performances that you probably forgot about. Everybody remembers the 2013 finals for Ray Allen's incredible game-tying shot in Game 6. It's believed by many that this shot is what single-handedly saved LeBron's legacy and the Heat's run as a whole. While it was without a doubt an incredible shot and would have ended their season if it missed, there was still a whole other game that had to be played in order for the Heat to win the title. And in Game 7, Ray Allen had a whopping 0 points. While Dwayne Wade and LeBron both had great performances, Shane Battier was the unsung hero in this game, playing a huge role in their victory. For some context, Battier was pretty much out of the rotation by the time this series rolled around. Through the first 6 matchups, he averaged less than 10 minutes a game. This was down almost 30 minutes from the amount of playing time he had in the finals the year prior. The biggest reason for his declining usage was that he completely lost his outside shooting touch. During the regular season, he shot 43% from 3 and was a big part in defining LeBron ball, where you surround him with a bunch of 3-and-D players and have them spot up in the perimeter and have him endlessly feed them with good open looks. When it worked, this team was quite simply unstoppable, as they won 66 games in the regular season, highlighted by a historic 27-game win streak. But when it didn't work, it clogged the floor for James and Wade, which made things so much more difficult. But in Game 7, Shane Battier's number was called, and he delivered. He finished with 6 threes, making all 5 of his first attempts, and his final make came late in the fourth quarter off an incredible LeBron pass that blew the roof off the American Airlines Arena.
Battier for 3! Bang!
I always respected this game from Battier so much because it showed what being a true professional is all about. When he wasn't performing well and his playing time got cut, Shane said, "Every now and then you have to eat a turd sandwich. When you eat a turd sandwich, that ribeye tastes really good next time." That ribeye ended up being a massive performance in a championship clinching game, so he clearly knew what he was talking about. After it was announced that Derrick Rose would be missing all of the 2013 season due to a torn ACL, pretty much everybody wrote off the Bulls except for the Bulls themselves. Somehow, with their MVP sidelined all year long, they managed to win 45 games and secured the 5 seed in the East. A big reason for this was because of the spark plug Nate Robinson provided them. Normally, a shot-chucking, undersized guard who didn't play any defense would never end up on a Tom Thibodeau-led roster, but they were clearly shorthanded at the point guard position, particularly on offense. So Chicago took a flyer on Nate Robinson and signed him to a non-guaranteed contract to see if he could provide a boost off the bench, but he ended up being so much more than that. Their original replacement for D. Rose, Kirk Hinrich, missed a bunch of time throughout the season due to injuries. Nate always stepped up in his absence and was actually the third leading scorer for this Bulls team and quickly became a fan favorite in the city. He may have driven his coach crazy with his play style, but he came through time and time again for this team. A perfect example to show how valuable Nate was came in Game 4 in the first round against the Nets. Down 2-1 in the series, Chicago was trailing by 14 points with less than 3 minutes left, as it looked like their season was starting to fall off the rails. But after CJ Watson missed a breakaway dunk to give the Bulls the slightest inch of life, Nate absolutely took over. He ran a personal 12-0 run all by himself, hitting an off the dribble 3 going right, a contested runner over Brook Lopez, a mid-range pull-up while falling down, made all 3 free throws after getting fouled on another jumper, and a fall-away mid-range shot. All of these were super difficult, and the Bulls likely go on to lose if he misses any of them, but he quite simply couldn't be stopped.
But wait, there's more!
The game ended up going to overtime, and the ridiculous shot making only continued. Nate ended up making what would have been one of the most out-of-control, chaotic game winners in playoff history with this running 20-footer that somehow banked in, but Joe Johnson ended up making a floater at the buzzer to send the game to his second OT. On top of that, Nate also fouled out in the second overtime, which kind of dampened his performance. The Bulls ended up winning after a third overtime and actually won this series in 7 games. That likely doesn't happen though if Nate Robinson didn't lose his mind and score 29 points in the fourth quarter in overtime. This has got to be one of the funniest, most random heroic performances I've ever seen. Back in 2017, the Celtics and Wizards quite simply hated each other from the moment the season started, and it seemed like everybody on both rosters got involved at some point. It all started back in November with John Wall throwing Marcus Smart to the ground in the middle of a 20-point blowout. The next time these two teams met, Wall got into yet another scuffle with Jay Crowder. For their third meeting of the season, the Wizards dressed in all black to signify that this game was going to be Boston's funeral, and Washington ended up winning that game by 15. Of course, the two ended up meeting in the playoffs, and it was Kelly Olynyk of all people to get involved next. After setting a hard screen on Kelly Oubre quite simply snapped and sprinted up to Olynyk and knocked him right on the floor as hard as he could. The young forward would be ejected, but the Wizards would end up winning this game by 27 points. Surprisingly, Olynyk never retaliated after it happened, but I guess it was because he knew he had a better form of revenge in his mind, and that was torching the Wizards. After 6 hard-fought games, this series came down to a Game 7 in TD Garden. In a series that featured big names like Isaiah Thomas, John Wall, and Bradley Beal, everyone was wondering who was going to be the one that would leave their mark on this decisive game. Nobody could have predicted what came next.
Thomas, the jab step. Olynyk a 3. Oh, Kelly Olynyk! The game of his life!
The announcer couldn't have said it better. Kelly Olynyk quite simply had the game of his life, scoring 14 points in the fourth quarter to close out Washington. After one of his many makes in the fourth quarter, the camera panned to a salty Kelly Oubre on the bench, which was pretty poetic if you ask me. Since this moment, Olynyk has bounced around the league as a decent role player, but he'll always have this legendary performance to hang his hat on. When you think about J.R. Smith in the finals, the first thing that comes to mind is his infamous blunder back in 2018, but he was a really important piece to those Cavs teams during their run. As a defender, he did a great job of holding Klay Thompson in check. Offensively, he struggled for the most part, but every now and then he would still do what he does best, and that was hit impossible three-pointers. Occasionally throughout those 4 consecutive matchups between the Warriors and Cavs, Smith would make the type of shots that would make you think he was a superstar. His best performance during this rivalry came in Game 5 of the 2017 Finals. These two teams were absolutely incredible on offense and had so much firepower. Because of this, it was pretty hard for Smith to stand out among the likes of LeBron, KD, Kyrie, and Steph, but it was impossible not to notice him during this game. He scored a modest 25 points, which was actually just the 4th most out of all the players in this game, but it really felt like so much more, and that's because of not just the type of shots he was hitting, but the time in which he made them. End of the first quarter, he knocks down a buzzer-beating 3 to extend Cleveland's lead to 4. Then in the second quarter, the Warriors had an offensive explosion and went up by 17, but JR hit these 2 crazy threes back-to-back to get the lead down to 11 before going into halftime. Shot clock winding down and Durant all over him? Doesn't matter. JR has no issue making a contestant 3 right in his face. And then as Cleveland was making their run at the end of the third quarter, he made another rainbow 3 to cut the lead to 5. And then when the Dubs were on the brink of pulling it away and calling it a series, he knocked down an and-one 3 while falling down to keep the Cavs within striking distance. And even though the game was out of reach in the final moments, Smith did LeBron one of the biggest favors of his career at the very end. With 20 seconds left, LeBron found J.R. Smith, who knocked down a corner 3 to cut the lead to 9. Although it didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, that assist marked LeBron's 50th of the series, which officially meant he averaged a triple-double in the finals. This is the only time this has happened in NBA history, and LeBron can thank J.R. for getting him over the edge. We remember KD averaging 35 in this series, we remember LeBron averaging a triple-double, but let's not forget how fun JR was to watch when he caught fire like this. Last but not least, we have one of the greatest, most frustrating performances in playoff history. In the 2021 first round, the 3-seed Nuggets were facing off against the 6-seed Trailblazers, but Portland was actually seen as the favorite heading into this series because Jamal Murray was out with a torn ACL. The teams were knotted at 2 games apiece, setting up a crucial Game 5 in Denver. And then on June 1st, 2021, Damian Lillard played in what my eyes is the greatest game in NBA history. On a night where pretty much the entire Blazers roster didn't show up, Dame did quite literally all he could have possibly done to will his team to a win. Let's take a look at the stat line to start. He scored 55 points on 17 of 24 shooting. He had a 96% true shooting percentage, which is statistically the most efficient 50-point playoff game ever. On top of that, he knocked down 12 threes, which is the most in a single playoff game in NBA history. And to make it even better, he also dished out 10 assists. This made him the only player to total 55 points and 10 assists in a playoff game. That stat line alone earned him the highest total game score in playoff history with 55.9. So if we look at the counting numbers, he had maybe the greatest all-around performance we've ever seen. But I promise you, the box score doesn't come close to properly showing how incredible he was in this game. Down the stretch of regulation, he hit his signature pound dribble sidestep 3 with 3 seconds left to send the game to overtime. Then in the first OT, Portland found themselves down 9 with just over 2 minutes to go, which led to Dame coming to the rescue once again. An and-one layup and 2 off-the-dribble threes later, he had the ball in his hands with his team down 3 once again, and he hit another miraculous triple to send the game to a second overtime. The Nuggets came to their senses after Dame knocked down his 12th 3, and just started doubling him as soon as he got the ball to make sure he couldn't keep scoring. After that, Robert Covington missed a dunk, dunk, and CJ McCollum stepped out of bounds on back-to-back possessions, leading to the Blazers ultimately losing this game and eventually the series in 6. If there was ever a single game that personified Damian Lillard's time with the Blazers, this is without a doubt it. An amazing, record-breaking performance is wasted because of an inadequate supporting cast that the front office put around him. They wasted pretty much his entire prime, and also maybe the greatest performance in postseason history. I really think we're all numb to it at this point, because this masterclass has been completely forgotten about just 2 years later. And that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know in the comments if there's any forgotten performances I missed, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time.